Hello, good evening. How are you?
Hello, Professor.
Hi,
Hello, good
Micah.
evening,
Hello,
Professor.
Sylvia.
Hello.
Hello. Well, I hope you're doing fine. Welcome to this week number two, class number one. And today we are going to, I think, finish the presentation that we had last week. And also, we are going to be talking about what is known as structuring a dynamic whole. Okay, the brief introduction to short story. And then, of course, we need to talk about um, the short stories that we have already left. We have not covered so far a sudden story, the Nightingale and the Rose, Two Kinds, and if we have time, the birthmark. And if we don't have time today, that will be on Thursday. Okay, I just want to say something before we start with the class that I don't know, we don't have internet access here where I live today, so I'm using the cell phone, sharing the internet from the cell phone with my computer so I can have the class. So if something happens, you know that should be the issue. Okay, just for you to know. All right. Um, so I want to know how you're doing. How was your weekend? Fine? Wild? Micah? Relaxed? What did you do?
It, it was my father's birthday, so I celebrated it.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Happy birthday to your father. Okay. Valeska, what's up?
Hello, Professor.
Hello.
I have
Valeska.
been
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Sorry.
I have been trying to read all the stories because they are a little bit complicated with the vocabulary, but I have learned new vocabulary, so that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Uh, it's because some of them come from a couple of centuries ago, maybe. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think in the birthmark, if I am not wrong, that is for
Yes.
Nathaniel
Yeah.
Hawthorne.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's so well, not all English, but it's not the English we speak today. Oscar Wilde also, he uses a lot of vocabulary that is not so common. But yeah, that's the idea. We learned new words, new vocabulary. That's okay. And I think everybody wants at least a piece of virtual cake from your father's birthday, Micah. Okay. So don't forget to share that with us, okay, by the end of the class. All right. So let's get started. I'm going to start sharing my screen with you. Remember what I said to you, my friends. If there are problems, probably it is going to be due to the internet access that I don't have internet access. I'm sharing the one from the cell phone. Okay, just for you to know. So last week, and you correct me, please. Last week, if I am not wrong, we stopped here. Okay, when it says the telling, right? No, you don't remember? I think it was the telling. And also remember, please feel free to interrupt me whenever you feel like, whenever you have a question or you want to participate, because I cannot see if you're raising your hands or, I don't know, sharing one of those emojis or whatever, because I'm in the full screen mode, okay? So yes, I remember this guy because he looks like Boombury a little bit. So we are going to talk about the telling, okay? That is the act of saying the story, okay? So we have a teller here, a telling. A teller is a narrator, okay? Basically, that is what the narrator does, okay? So the telling, every tale must have a narrator, always. So don't forget about that, my friends. The telling agent of the story. It can be a character, mhm, or it can also be a character that is from outside the story, more like a witness of the events. We can also have an object telling the story. We can have a narrator that doesn't really exist, that can be omniscient, okay, etc., etc., etc. So telling or narrating is a very dynamic act, as well as one which implies a series of choices being made in its execution, okay? The telling, we don't have to confuse it with the narrative voice with the author. This is important. I don't know if it sounds the same to you, but they're two different things, okay? One thing is the narrative voice, and one thing is the author, okay? The author is Shakespeare, let's say, can be Virginia Woolf, okay? But the narrative voice is the narrator of the story, okay? So two different things, okay? Not necessarily it has to be the same. I can have a female narrator in my story and I am a male author. I don't know if you see what I'm trying to tell you here, okay? So do not confuse the narrative voice with the author because they are not the same. Sometimes the author uses a lot of his or her or their personal experiences in life to tell excuse me, to tell a story, okay? Sometimes it can be just the imagination, and sometimes it can be a mixture of the two. Sometimes you can have real events mixed with things that never happened in the author's life, but I need someone to do that, to tell that story. So that is why I need the narrator, okay, the narrative voice. So remember, the author actually is not necessary. In literature, my friends, there is a theory that says that the author is not necessary, is not needed. This theory is known or is called as the death of the author. And what it means is that a text doesn't need an author. We saw it last week. Remember when we had the experiment with the same sentence that I gave you, and then I asked you all to describe the old house in the middle of the road. You remember? Well, at that moment, you all became authors because you were describing your own story, your own text, and you saw the results. Some of them had similar things, but none of them was exactly the same. They all were different in one way or another. Okay, so the author that was, let's say, me, because I gave you the sentence, at the end, I wasn't necessary because what you really needed was the text. And the text you need it in order to create meaning. So this is a very personal act, okay? What I'm trying to say at the end of the day here is that do not confuse the narrative voice with the author because they are two different things, okay? As an author, I can choose the telling voice for the story. What is that? Well, I can decide if the narrator is going to be the main character, or is going to be a secondary character, or is it going to be an external character or external point of view, or a limited point of view. We are going to see all those elements when we get to that part of the theory. But yes, the author is the one that chooses that, okay? Sometimes it is difficult to find the author because we don't know who who is telling the story. And sometimes the author chooses to have different narrative voices. So you can switch from a third person point of view to a first character to a second character, and then even to the interior monologue. That is a stream of consciousness. And that is when you get into the mind of the character. So sometimes it's difficult. That is why reading Virginia Woolf or James Joyce sometimes it's very challenging. Why? Because sometimes you are reading and we are reading the description of the narrator, the narrative voice, but then it changes. And then what we are reading are the thoughts of the character. And sometimes it's kind of difficult for us as readers to know which is which, on where, when there is a change. Okay, sometimes it's difficult. Okay, um, so remember not to confuse the narrative voice with the author. That the author, yes, he or she or they choose the narrative voice, okay, the type of narrator they're going to have for the text. Also, the telling is the telling voice, then what determines how the tale is structured, the vocabulary choice, and the information given. What is that? What does it mean? It means that depending on depending on the type of narrator the story has, that is going to affect how the story is going to be told. Because it's not the same to have a first person narrator, because that narrator, it is only going to tell what he or she or they are able to see at the moment, than to have a outside narrator, somebody that is watching the story from outside, because that person has a wider scope of things, a wider vision, okay? Or if we have a third person point of view. Remember that a third person point of view is somebody that knows what is happening. But sometimes this third person point of view, it is limited. So he or she or they don't know everything that is happening, okay? So keep that in mind. The selection of the narrative voice is going to affect how the story is told, how it is structured, the vocabulary choice. It is not the same to have a narrator like, I don't know, let me see, the president of Costa Rica, Rodrigo Chavez, with his vocabulary and his gestures and all those things. Then the narrator is going to be, I don't know, let me see, who else? It can be um, William Shakespeare, for instance. It is going to be totally different because the choice of words, it is different, right? It's not the same. It is not the same to have male narrative voice than to have a female point of view, or a point of view that is not determined. Okay, we don't know that is going to affect the whole thing. Okay. Okay, now we have a lot of stuff here, okay? These are the different parts of or elements of the telling, the narrator. You have first person, omniscient, dramatic or scenic, third person or limited omniscient narrator, the stream of consciousness. Then you have the tone, the atmosphere, and finally there is also a style. So you see, there is a lot of stuff, but let's go little by little. So don't panic, okay? The first person narrator is very easy to identify because it is always going to use I, okay? I. And I saw this and I talked to her and I came to the apartment, etc., etc., etc. This narrative voice is very personal and transparent, and also the information is very limited because everything is going to depend on this I that is telling the story, okay? The person telling the story. You can also have an omniscient narrative voice. The omniscient point of view or narrator, okay, knows everything that has happened and that is happening, okay, within and beyond the characters, okay? Maybe like a semi-god, if you want to put it in other words. It seems to be objective and credible, but we have to be careful because we don't need to believe, we don't have to take anything a narrator says for granted. Our job as a reader or as readers is to question the narrator. Always question the narrative voice, because sometimes the narrative voice has a purpose, and that narrative voice wants to convince us that something occurred or happened in a certain way when it is not. Okay? So I repeat, the job of the reader, our job as readers, is to question the narrator, the narrative voice. Okay? Nevertheless, usually the omniscient knows everything, or at least knows more than the first person narrator. Okay? The omniscient knows what is happening or has happened to the characters or most of the characters and to the telling itself. Okay? To the story. Okay? Then you have also dramatic or scenic. It tends to be present in the story with very little or no description. So this is like very scientific, okay? It's like maybe Hemingway. We are going to read Hemingway. Hemingway is like that. It's just like there in the story, okay? And there is not so much description, okay? It's just short sentences. There is no judgment. There is no direct intervention, as opposed to, let's say, Edgar Allan Poe, for instance. Edgar Allan Poe or Lovecraft, they use a lot of description. And sometimes, to me, it's boring because they describe the setting or the characters or whatever is happening in so much detail that I think it's boring. Okay, but it's the opposite. Okay, so a dramatic or a scenic tends to present the story with very little or no description, no judgment, and no direct intervention. The purpose is to be as objective as possible. It is more like a journalistic style. And that's what I was telling you. The Ernest Hemingway is a very good example because I'm Ernest Hemingway. Before becoming a writer, okay, he was a journalist. Okay, and that's why he wrote about war and all that stuff because he was part of the army, the U.S. Army during World War One. He was the driver of an ambulance, so he was a first-hand witness of many incidents. Okay, then you have third person or limited omniscient narrator. It is similar to the first person narrator with the difference that the information given to the reader is essentially limited to what the narrator's chosen character experiences or observes. What is this? Okay. Similar to the first person narrator, it is very limited because only through the eyes of that first person or the third person or limited omniscient narrator we can see the story or we can see the details. Nevertheless, the first person, as I said before, is always I, me, okay? It's I, me telling the story. The third person or the limited omniscient narrator is somebody from outside. It is very limited, doesn't know much about what is happening. Maybe about only 2 or 3 characters, but doesn't know anything that occurred before or doesn't know anything related to the other characters, okay? But doesn't use the I or the me because it's somebody from outside. Okay. Now, the stream of consciousness, as I said before, this technique was mainly used by Virginia Woolf and James Joyce. Okay. Um, it's interesting because it is very limited because we are only allowed to see, to read, okay, the thoughts running through a character's mind. It is also called interior monologue. So you can say interior monologue or the stream of consciousness is the same. And remember, it is very limited because we only see the current of thoughts that the character is going through. All right. So of course, it is very personal and sometimes it is very confusing because we are like that. Sometimes you are in the bus and you are thinking many different things at the same time without any punctuation or anything. So That is exactly how this is written. So it's kind of confusing, okay? Now we get to the tone. The tone is the attitude that is used to tell the story. In this case, is the attitude taken by the narrator. It can be defiant, it can be sarcastic, it can be sad, it can be nostalgic, it can be happy, etc., etc., etc. And that is going to depend on the events being told, or it is going to depend on the character, okay, that tells the story. Because he or she or they, I mean, the ones that tells or sets the tone of the story, okay? The atmosphere is the general mood established in the literary text. It is related to the word choice carried out by the narrator. For instance, a sober, that is luxurious, atmosphere may be created by words related to darkness, fear, and danger. Okay? And finally, there is the Harry style, the style. Style is the name given to the way in which the narrative voice expresses itself. It has to do with syntax, rhythm, sentence length, etc., etc., etc. And of course, my friends, this is very personal, okay? Because that is going to depend on the author. Each author has his, her, their style. You recognize that. Immediately you start reading, you say, oh, this is pure Hemingway, or this is pure Edgar Allan Poe, or this is pure Oscar Wilde, or this is pure the Bronte sisters, etc., etc., etc. It is like music, right? That singers or different bands, they have a style. And the moment you start listening to the first notes of a song, and then as the song unfolds, you say, "Oh, this sounds like U2. This sounds like Metallica. This sounds like Lady Gaga." Okay, Madonna, etc., etc. Why? Because that depends on the style, and the style is very personal. Okay. Now let's talk about the reader. That is us. Okay. The reader. You have a picture of a reader. The reader. Any literary text cannot be considered complete without the participation of the reader. Okay? Listen, I don't know if you have heard this before, okay? But for instance, let me choose a volunteer, okay? Um, Evelyn, what's up? Evelyn, are you with us? Yes? No? I feel the presence of Evelyn in the room. Okay.
Hi.
How are you, Evelyn?
I'm fine.
Yes,
And you?
Evelyn, fine, but I forgot what I was going to ask you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I remember. We were talking about what we were talking about, Sylvia. Remind me, please. Oh my God.
How we were going to be able to see the characteristics on the text and then say, this is like this author, or this is just like this other author.
Yes, but I forgot. Evelyn, you're lucky. I forgot my question and what I was going to ask you.
Well, we were talking about the reader right now.
Okay, yes, but what about it? I was going to ask you for something. Let me see. If I go back, it says a literary text cannot be considered complete without the participation of the reader. Okay? Gee, I don't know. I forgot. Well, Evelyn, if I remember, I will go back to you. Okay? I'm just going to start sharing the screen again. I don't know what is happening to me, really. Okay, so due to the plurality of approaches, there are many meanings to a text. We saw it last week, okay, with the old house in the middle of the road, okay. Due to the plurality of approaches, there are many meanings to a text, even though it is the same text, okay. And finally, we can say that it is the reader who ascribes meaning to the text. What is ascribe? To ascribe means that puts, that gives the meaning to the text. And again, we saw it last week with the experiment that we carried out, okay? Every single description of the old house in the middle of the road was unique because it had ascribed the meaning that you provided, that you created for that specific text. Some of you had a house of a different color, some of you had people there, others some were like in the middle of the desert. What else? There were trees. They were like white, if I am not wrong, two-story houses, etc., etc., etc. Okay, that is something very personal, and of course, that is going to depend on your background knowledge, remember, or schemata, okay? And then you have this picture here, okay? That again, if I ask you to come up with a story based on that picture, I know that we are going to have different versions of that story because it is going to be very personal, okay? We can say, for instance, if I ask you for the tone, let's suppose that this is a story, okay? It is a text, right? What is the tone you see here in this text, in this image?
Romantic.
Romantic, okay, what else?
Peaceful.
Peaceful, okay. What else?
I would say it's eerie.
Mm-hmm. It can be a little bit eerie, mysterious, okay, right? What else? Do you find it aggressive or violent?
No.
No, right? Okay. And what about the atmosphere? Okay. What is the atmosphere in this text? If I ask you for you to ask you to describe this image, okay, what would you say? It is in the countryside. Does it give you hope or not? Is there hope, or there is no hope at all for you? What do you feel? Remember, you are the reader, so you create meaning, right? You can say whatever you want as long as you prove it. And this is very personal, okay? You can use, let's suppose, symbols or colors or whatever. So what do you think about it? Somebody said romantic. I don't remember who was it, but I heard somebody said romantic. Who was that?
Me, Sylvia.
Sylvia. Okay, Sylvia. Why romantic? Tell me.
Because to me, it looks like the early morning, like when the sun is just coming out, and it's you're maybe just walking in the morning, or with your partner, or your family, or I don't know. To me, it looks hopeful and nice and inviting.
Okay, good. Anyone else? Is it the same for everybody? Romantic.
I think the fog gives a little of a mystery vibe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like if you're going to find hope because there is a light on the tree, and for me that's hope. But at the back you can see the fog. So maybe it's like a difficult situation and the tree is hope.
Oh, very good, right? Like you it can be a person that is coming out of a personal problem, personal issues. So you see the forest at the back with the fog and all that, and then the road. The road plays a very important role here, right? Road means going from one place to another. So you are coming from the darkness, okay, and the I don't know, mysterious atmosphere to a place that is bright, full of light, and the green tree that represents hope. But it depends on how you say things, my friends, because you can say it the other way around, and you can say, no, this is very tragic, it is very sad, and it is very depressive. And then, I don't know, Evelyn is going to say, why, Professor? And I say, well, Evelyn, because to me, this represents a person that is going through the forest. Okay, at this moment there is light, there is a green tree. Okay, you can see the road, but as you get deeper and deeper into this walk, into this road, then it is becoming darker, and also it's not clear because of the fog and all that. So you can have another reading of the same image in another text, and that is going to depend on the reader. Okay, both are correct, both are fine, but that depends, or that would depend on the person reading the text. And of course, the tone, the setting, the type of narrator, everything, right? So just for you to know and see how everything works when it comes to literature. And in this way, we finish with the first chapter. Okay. Now, my friends, you remember that we had one story for last class, right? And it was the first one that is called A Sudden Story. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
Okay. Let me see if I can find it, because today it will be almost impossible to open my Zoom virtual because I'm using uh, the internet connection, and I don't think that is going to be strong enough. Okay, this is the story. So let me see if I can enlarge that one a little bit. Okay, can you read it? Yeah? Can you see it? Or
No,
not?
you're
No.
not currently sharing
No.
the screen.
You're not sharing, and you know why? Because I'm very selfish. Okay, a moment. You can see it, right? So you have A Sudden Story by Robert Cooper, okay? Pay attention because every single detail counts, okay? The first thing that gets your attention is the title, right? Sudden Story. What does it tell you? What does it say to you? It can be many things. It can be a story that is short because it is sudden, or it can be a story that just happened in a second because it was out of the blue. Okay, so that can be a sudden story. Okay, something that emerged or emerges or emerged when least expected, and it was created almost by itself in an automatic way. All right, so it can be both. It says, once upon a time, and suddenly, while it still could, the story began. For the hero setting forth, there was, of course, nothing sudden about it, neither about the setting forth, which he had spent his entire lifetime anticipating, not about any conceivable endings, which seemed, like the horizon, to be always somewhere else. For the dragon, however, who was stupid, everything was sudden. He was suddenly hungry, and then he was suddenly eating something. Sounds like British, okay? Always, it was like the first time. Then, all of a sudden, he had, or he could remember having eaten something like that before, a certain familiar soreness. And just as suddenly he could forget. The hero coming suddenly upon the dragon. He had been trekking for years through enchanted forests, endless deserts, cities carbonized by the dragon breath. For him, suddenly was not exactly the word. Found himself envying, as he drew his sword. A possible ending had just loomed out before him, and as though the horizon had, with the desperate illusion of suddenness tipped. The dragon senseless freedom. Freedom? The dragon might have asked, had he not been so stupid? Showing over, meanwhile, the sudden familiar sourness. A memory? On his breath, from what? Forgotten. Okay, so what do you think about this? First question. Can this be considered a story? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Why? Give me 400 sentences to support your answer, okay? I'm just kidding, Sylvia. Just give me one. Sylvia, I hear you said yes.
Because it's telling something that happened,
Okay,
whether it is imaginary or true, it's just telling something that happened.
very good, Sylvia. And what does a story need? We just saw it in the theory. What does it need? A story. For a story to be a story.
A teller and a reader.
A telling and a reader. What else?
Well, I would say that well, in this story we have a protagonist and also an antagonist. So
Very good. Who is the protagonist and who is the antagonist?
I think that the hero is the protagonist and the dragon is the antagonist.
So, minor, right? Alonso, I don't remember what you told
Yes.
me.
Whatever you want.
No. What is your
Alonso, that's fine.
Alonso? Okay, but tell me what is your opinion? Who is the hero and why?
Um,
Does he die at the end or what happens?
well, I didn't quite understand that part, but what I did understand is that, well, the hero is kind of concerned or overwhelmed because he feels like he doesn't have freedom. Uh, in, uh, on the other hand, the dragon, uh, does whatever he wants. So, uh, it's like this. I don't know. Like, I think that the story is about like the hero concerning about this, about those terms, freedom, and probably the quest or his quest, about being a hero.
Okay, very good. Let's just start with something because I think you all agree on this. The story's ending is a little bit confusing, right? So who can explain to me and to the rest of the class what happens at the end of the story? Somebody raise a hand, and that is Anthony. Come on, hit me with your best shot.
Okay, so if I'm correct, basically this story is like fragmented. I don't remember. It is not in chronological order, but I don't know the name for the exact opposite. But basically, it's like telling us that our hero, our protagonist, well, fail the quest, basically.
Okay,
Like, and in the middle of the story,
okay,
and basically leaving us to the antagonist literally winning, or in this case, we can say the evil winning.
okay. Yeah, something important is how it starts. It starts once upon a time. And that is a classic phrase for fairy tales or just tales, okay? Especially for children, right? Once upon a time, there was a Sylvia who used to eat children because she hated them, okay? And la 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 la. But then Mariana appeared and confronted Sylvia and gave her a little bit of Coca-Cola Zero. And then Sylvia changed and now she loves children, okay? Hmm? Right? So that would be a story, okay? You have the once upon a time, right? That's classical, okay? So by doing this, the narrator of the story is validating it. It's saying, yes, this is a story and it's a classical story, right? Do we have a setting? Yes, because all the stories need a setting, right? We don't know exactly, but we can assume that it's in a castle, maybe in a forest, right? Because we have a sort of a knight and a dragon, and that is medieval times, right? In a way, that's what we have in the medieval times. You have the knights and you have these dragons, and then you have like King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so that can be that period of time if you want to see it in that way, right? But what I think it was, Anthony said is kind of true. After that introduction, to Once Upon a Time, the story is very fragmented, right? It starts like in medias res. You know what the term medias res means? I mean, it is from Latin. It means in the middle of the thing, in the middle of the story, okay? Medias res, okay? Don't forget about that. When you want to write an essay, you want to use that word within quotation marks so you can sound a little bit academical. You say, well, the story begins in medias res, okay? That is in the middle of the thing. And you have actually two characters. You have the knight or the hero, and then you have the dragon. And each one of them is described in a different way. The hero that we can consider the main character is like tired, right? It's like bored. He wants or he longs for freedom, right? But he's brave, and he has been many a time on a journey looking for this dragon to kill it. It is like his quest. Remember what we studied last week, okay? The quest and the quester, right? So he's on this quest to kill this dragon. That is why he was what he was born for, okay? Or why he was born for, to kill the dragon. But the other character is a dragon. And the dragon is described as, what do we know about the poor dragon? Come on.
It's described as stupid.
Stupid, dumb. He doesn't know anything. He eats something and then has the same taste. It's sour, amargo, but he doesn't remember what it is. He not just feels, tastes a little bit familiar, but he doesn't know. And then he is totally free. He continues, he goes on with his life, right? Hmm? At the end of the story, we are inside um, the dragon's head. We are seeing the story from the perspective of the dragon, okay? And we know that he just has eaten the hero, because he says, oh, this tastes familiar, this sourness. I don't know where I have tried or eaten this before, but what the heck? Let's continue with my life, okay? So that's when we know that he just killed and ate the hero, the dragon, the protagonist of the story. And by the dragon saying that it tastes familiar, it is telling us that there have been many knights or heroes or whatever that the dragon has eaten before. Okay? Do you agree with me or not? That is why the story is called a sudden story, because it's something that happens suddenly, out of the blue. The dragon doesn't know anything. For him, there is no time. For it, there is no time. He doesn't know anything. It's just everything happens out of the blue. You know, sudden, all of a sudden, right? He found the knight, ate it, period. Goes on with his life. That is why it is called a sudden story, because he plays with the meaning. It is a story that is short, or it is something that occurs almost, out of the blue, suddenly. That is what happens at the end. That the dragon, without knowing, without noticing, he just ate the hero, the story, or the knight. Okay? So yes, we can say that it's freedom, right? And I don't know, living life the way it is. For a dragon, and this dragon in specific, that's his life. While for the hero, the life, I don't know, was not a happy one, because he was on this quest looking for a dragon because his mission was to kill it. Okay? Questions? Comments? Doubts? Complaints? No? Nothing? Okay, good. Remember, please feel free to participate, okay? The other story that we had to read for last week was The Nightingale and the Rose. How did you find this story? Maria Celeste or Celeste? I don't remember. What is your preferred name?
Hello. Anyway, it's fine. Well, for me, it was like very sad, and I think it was like kind of ironic because the nightingale, well, as I understood it, like the nightingale sacrificed itself in order to give the man a rose so that he could give it to the woman that he was in love with.
Celeste, are you crying because of the story? No.
No,
Okay.
I think my voice just sounded like that.
Okay.
But then,
You're a good narrator for the story. Okay.
But when the girl rejected him, he threw the rose to, I think, to the street or something like that. So I found it very sad that it seemed like the nightingale was the one that knew what it meant to love someone, because she showed it, well, it showed it by dying, basically.
Okay. Yeah. Do you all agree with Celeste? That's okay. I call you Celeste.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay. Do you all agree with Celeste when she says that it's a very sad story? Or is there anyone who finds this story to be, I don't know, happy, or I don't know? No?
I agree. It's very, very sad.
It's very sad, right? Unfair. Now, what do you think is the real purpose of Oscar Wilde behind writing this story? Because yes, Celeste summarized the story pretty well. Okay, that's what happens, right? So the Nightingale sacrifices itself, his life, right, to paint or whatever the road rests, so the kid can I don't know, get the love of his life back, or can be corresponded by the love of his life. But it doesn't happen in that way at the end. So that sacrifice was in vain. What do you think, Valeska, in I don't know, anyone? What is the purpose? What is Oscar Wilde, telling us?
I look for, because I was very sad after I read that story, because I thought it wasn't has a purpose. Like the nightingale died and nothing happened after that,
Mhm.
you know. But I searched and it was like um, the author was trying to tell us that people sometimes take the importance of love about economic things because the girl said that he had something more valuable than the
Mhm.
rose.
Yes,
So
yes.
I think could be like something like that, that people take importance some things in differ from other people.
Okay, good, good, Valeska. Anyone else?
Maybe I can add
Mhm.
that uh, on I forgot the word, but basically like doing sacrifices that you don't need to. Like I never understood why the Nightingale, or it's never said, I think, that why the Nightingale was helping the student
Yeah.
like to obtain the rose. So like unnecessary sacrifices.
Mhm. That's a good point, Anthony. I think we all have, in one moment in our lives, done something like this, right? And we do something for someone else unexpectedly because it just came out from the bottom of our heart to do it. And nevertheless, the result or what we expected to have as a result is not what we wanted, right? And we end up with a broken heart or something like that, okay? Um, you have to remember that this story was written by Oscar Wilde, and that is during the Victorian England. And that is a, a period of time that lived based upon appearances, okay? Oscar Wilde was Irish, and by the way, today is St. Patrick's Day, so happy St. Patrick's Day, okay? Um, Oscar Wilde was Irish, but he was living in England, okay? And he was homosexual. And of course, that Victorian society was very tough and strict, and he was not accepted. And Oscar Wilde was very ironic, and he loved to criticize the British Victorian society. He really loved to criticize the you know, the ministers, the king, the queen, whatever, and especially because they were British, and there was always this conflict, you know, between Ireland and England, right? And they hate each other because England has been an empire that has taken many countries under their power, under their control, right? And Ireland, in a moment in history, was part of England, and then they rebelled against the British Empire and then became independent. And I think it was around 1921. But the point here is that maybe Oscar Wilde was telling a metaphor, a reflection of his life, that he was married first and he had a couple of kids, but his real identity, his real self, was he was not free to show it because of the society. But once the society and the high people of that society, the ones who were always criticized by Oscar Wilde, find out about the relationship that Oscar Wilde was having with the son of one of these rich men of that society. He was taken to jail, and he had to spend 2 years in jail doing hard work and all that stuff. And for him, that was a person that I was always, you know, like he was always well dressed and used to wear luxurious clothing and very fine clothing and everything. It was too much and was very difficult for him to accept, and he died. So, in a way, you can see a reflection of his life in the Nightingale. Okay, that maybe he sacrificed the life for other people, but the other people, in this case, the kid or the girl, didn't appreciate that, right? So that can be an interpretation of the story, but I think it's basically that to answer Anthony's questions, why do we do that? Why did the Nightingale do it? Well, because that's part of human nature. Many a time we do things without expecting something in return, right? But sometimes, even though we don't expect anything in return, we expect that the other person is going to be happy. But life is like that, and life is not full of happy endings, and sometimes life is very tragic, like in this story. So I agree with all of you. That is a very sad story. When I read the story some years ago, I thought, gee, why did the Nightingale do it? Just like the same question you were asking themselves. It was not worthy. I mean, but I don't know. I don't know. What else do you think about it? Final thoughts about the story. Do we have a hero? If I ask you to use the concept of the quester and all that, do we have a hero, a quest here? Do you remember the characteristics or the features of the quest that we studied last week?
Yes, to me, it would be the Nightingale.
Okay, why? What elements of a hero do you see there?
He had to go from one place to another, and he sacrificed himself and did or overcome obstacles to achieve a goal.
Okay, and remember that the theory also mentioned that not always the quester achieves or reaches the goal in life. Sometimes the quester, the hero, fails. Somebody mentioned that before. So this is a failure, then, right? The hero doesn't achieve success. The young boy also, that is part of the journey, right? Achieves experience. That is also one of the characteristics of the quest. That it is a young character, right? And that usually what you get at the end, it's not necessarily no riches or gold or anything, but experience. And I think, for sure, he obtained or he got experience in this story. Okay. Anything else?
You could also say, I'm just to, to add to that, you could also say that the Nightingale achieved a goal because his goal was to give the rose to the boy so that he could find love. And it helped him find maybe true love because it was not with this person.
That can be a perfect reading of the story. It can be an perfect interpretation. Yes, Silvia, you're absolutely right. That can be an interpretation that in that case, the Nightingale achieves the goal, okay? Because, he succeeds in bringing painting, using, I don't know, painting or whatever that is, the rose red. That was what the kid wanted, okay? And at the end, he's not corresponded back, right? But yes, as Anthony, I think it was the one who mentioned that. It also shows how materialistic or how materialism is present in society, right? Not to be chauvinistic. It can be anyone, right? It can be a man and a woman, a man, a father with a daughter, anyone, right? Sometimes we pay attention to material things only, and we forget about the spiritual abstract part of ourselves, okay? Right? And that is also important. So yes, Sylvia, very good. Okay, very good. Let's move on to the next story. That is Two Kinds. This is Amy Tan, Chinese writer, very famous in the US. Amy Tan published Two Kinds as part of a book. Yeah, let me see if I remember the name of the book. That is called the Joy Luck book club or something like that. That was a collection of stories dealing with her Chinese ancestry from the mother and the grandmother moving from China to the United States, and then also how she grew up in the United States. And then you feel that in the story, right? You see this confrontation between mother and daughter, okay, right? Um, how would you describe the mother? This is, I mean, you have to keep in mind something that we mentioned today about the narrative voice. That the story, who tells the story?
The daughter.
The daughter. That means what?
That she's biased.
It's biased in a way, but also it includes her background, her family background, cultural background. So it has a lot of Chinese background and culture that maybe for the rest of us who are not Chinese or are not familiar to Chinese culture may sound or may look very strange, right? In a way. But for instance, the Chinese culture is very strict. And usually you have to do what your mother says you have to do. Okay? And you see that confrontation in the story, right? The mother, Chinese, all woman. So that means her Chinese values and culture are very strong within her. Okay? How would you describe her? She's how? How do you remember her? The mother. Do you consider her a nice person or not? Come on, I'm giving imaginary Irish extra points today.
Well, Professor, for me, this character is like probably well constructed into the stereotype of a all Chinese woman.
Mhm,
Like, she probably is really tough,
mhm.
um, straight with her directions or indications. So I don't know. For me, she's like probably a woman who is really involved in her Chinese culture, and probably she's expecting the same for her daughter.
Yeah, yes. And the Chinese families, I mean, I don't know. I lived in Panama for 10 years, I told you. And in Panama, the Chinese culture is very strong. They are the ones in charge of the stores, pulperias here. Well, in Panama, they call it chinitos. So you go to the pulperia, you go to the chinito de la esquina, and you buy things, okay? And I always remember, like, you used to have this family, Jose and Ana, the parents, and then you have Luisito, I don't remember. It was I lived in Panama for 10 years. So I moved to Panama in 1998. Um, so the kid was young, okay? But they always have been very strong, I mean, strict with something, and that is the education. The Chinese people, they don't care about the appearances. They don't care about, wearing the most expensive dresses or shirts or clothing in general. For them, that is not important. But they really pay attention and focus and spend a lot of their money on education and specifically the education of their kids. So I remember that kid was always studying. He was very focused, very serious, finished high school. And when I realized he moved to the United States with a sister to study there. And the parents pay for everything. Just think about it. It is very expensive to pay for college in the United States without a scholarship and all that. And these two parents, they were paying for the kids' education there and they finish and then they stay there in the US. Well, in the story, you see that. This is exactly the same. Maybe there is a sort of a stereotype, as Alonso said, but that is the way most of them are. they really focus and care about the education of the kids, and they want their kids to be the number one. That is why the mother is so stubborn. That is the mother is so strict. That is why the mother, I don't know, focuses so much on the narrator, right? The girl. Because for the mother, the only thing she wants is the daughter to be the best, the number one in everything. And it was so sick to the point that even blinded her because she was not able to see that the girl was not that good to play the piano, for instance. Or remember when she goes to this recital, this performance, and she was going to play the piano because there was a piano teacher visiting the house every week or twice a week, I don't remember. And then when she starts playing the piano, then she forgets about everything, and it was a disaster. So the mother said, "Well, maybe it's not the piano, maybe it is something else." But then in the story, you see something very interesting, and that is the clash of cultures. You see the Chinese traditional culture represented by the mom. But then you see the younger generation of Chinese people, in this case, a Chinese girl, being rebellious, confronting the mother, right? That is relevant, I think. That is important uh, because represents the generational gap, okay? The difference between the mother and the daughter, right? So that's what you see throughout the story. These conflicts. The narrator, of course, as I think it was Sylvia who said it, that is totally biased. Of course, it is biased because the story is told from the perspective of the little girl. And we feel her rage, her frustration, right? And we maybe identify a little bit with her. And we say, yeah, the mother, please, señora, siéntese, right? We say, please stop bothering her, let her be, right? Because our culture is different, right? Mainly, I'm not going to say that we don't have mother figures like in Costa Rica, like the Chinese woman in the story. Maybe they are, but generally speaking, we are very different. Anthony.
Have you read FOB?
What?
FOB, Fresh Off the Boat, is a play.
No? What is it
Okay.
about?
So basically, it is a play. I read it in Introduction to Drama,
Mm.
and this story speaks so well about being the different social, psychological uh, experiences in the US being a extranjero,
A foreigner or alien? Now they're
a,
using the term alien.
a foreign.
Yeah.
So it talks about the different levels of a person as a foreigner, like in this case, is in the Asian culture coming to US. So there is the FOB, the fresh off the boat, the immigrant that just came
Mm-hmm.
in the country and is denying everything about the US culture. Then we have another character that is like in the middle ground, that it is the American Chinese, that basically is like half and half, that is like making fun of their Chinese culture and
Mm-hmm.
appraising the US culture.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the American Chinese, or I think I got it reversed, but basically it's the foreigner that has how can I say this? Accepted both its heritage,
Uh-huh.
being American and Chinese. Is a really good play. that showcases all three. And in this story, I think it is like uh, the FOB, the person that still has the Chinese culture and try to live in that way, and the Chinese American that uh, wants to be uh, like both.
Yes, and that also it's part of a new generation, right? Like the narrator, right? That sounds very interesting, and I'm going to look for it. Uh, I never read it, but it sounds nice. Uh, okay, so let's move on with the story, right? And at the end, the story turns a little bit or becomes a little bit sad, okay? Um, because then we realize that the mother dies and all that, and then we know that the narrator is older and goes back to the house, and then she finds the piano, I guess, right? And then she tries to play the tune that is called. Let me see if I'm gonna be able to show you that video that I have here. Okay, just a second. Because the story moves around two kinds, and it's about the piano, right? You know, the piano, when you have the keys of the piano, they're mainly the like two colors, right? Uh, you have um, the white keys on the ivory and the ebony, right? Black and white keys. You remember?
Yes.
So that represents the mother and the daughter. It's a metaphor. It's a symbol. And at the end of the story, I found it very sad because she realizes that both keys can reach perfection, right? In a song only when they are played together. Okay? And that is actually a song the story is based on. That is the one that she plays at the festival or whatever that is. Okay? But let me see if I can get, I don't know because of the internet connection today, but I found that the tune, I found the song, and that includes these two parts. That is one perfectly, no, I don't know what, and the other one, let me see if I can remember. Um, just a second. This one. I'm going to open this. There is brilliant child and perfectly contented but human. I don't know if you pronounce it like that. Let me see if I can share that with you. Just a second. Just a second. Remember that I'm using my cell phone, so it is not the same. Well, meanwhile, it loads. Remember, for the next class on Thursday, we are going to be talking about the birthmark, okay? And then the lottery And the other story is the one who came out of, well, this is the song. So the tune is composed of two parts. This first part is called Pleading Child, okay? And then you have the second part, that is this. So they sound very similar. So you can see this one sounds a little bit, I don't know, happier or something. It gives you the idea, but it's a complement of the first tune. Okay, for next class, please, well, read if you haven't the birthmark that was for today, and also the lottery and the ones who walked away from Omelas. Okay. That plus the theory that you're going to find here, okay? The dynamic whole and the arrangement of incidents, that is the plot, okay? You have it here in week number 2, but this is going to be on Thursday. I don't know if you can see it. So structuring a dynamic whole, that was for today, but we didn't have time to cover that. Analyzing the tale, that is the arrangement or the organization of incidents, that is the plot. The birthmark, the lottery, and the ones who walked away from Omelas. That's what we're going to be doing, analyzing or talking about in class on Thursday, okay? I don't know if there is anything else that you want to add, or if I forgot about something, please let me know right now. Just a second. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, questions, doubts, complaints?
No, all is clear.
Yeah, sure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, everything's clear here.
Well, but what is not clear is the screen, my friends. But happily we were able to finish the class, okay? So thank you very much, my friends. Have an excellent rest of the week. See you on Thursday. And don't forget to read the birthmark, the lottery, and the ones who walked away from Omelas. This is more, I don't know, more like dealing more with horror and mystery or gothic literature. So maybe you're going to like that, okay? And pay attention to the lottery and keep in mind, remember the Hunger Games, because they're very, very similar. Okay? Thank you very much. And then that will be it for today. Bye-bye and see you on Thursday. Okay?
Bye,
Thank
Professor.
you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Professor. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.